Yes, sir.
Shit.
In the 1980s, one face was everywhere. Big smile, easy charm, box office gold. Steve Guttenberg wasn't just famous, he was unstoppable. From Police Academy to 3 Men and a Baby, he became the guy Hollywood trusted to carry a movie, and audiences couldn't get enough of him. But then, something strange happened. While other stars from his era kept climbing higher, Guttenberg slowly faded from the spotlight. No big scandals, no shocking headlines, just silence. So what really happened? Did Hollywood move on? Did one career decision change everything? Or did Steve Guttenberg walk away from fame on his own terms? Because behind the laughter and behind the blockbuster hits is a story of sudden success, quiet struggles, and a life that looks very different from what anyone expected. This is the rise, the mystery, and the untold truth of Steve Guttenberg. Long Island was where it all began for Steve Guttenberg, a kid who caught the acting bug early, but never quite thought of himself as a natural star. "There were much more charismatic guys than me," he admitted years later. In high school, he was stuck in supporting roles, watching the spotlight hit everyone else. Yet there were small victories, a tiny part in an off-Broadway production of The Lion in Winter, a summer at Juilliard studying under John Houseman. Still, Guttenberg shrugged it off. "I guess it's just luck that you get chosen." And luck, good or bad, would follow him throughout his career. Behind the team dreaming of Hollywood stood his father, Stanley, former Army Ranger, 82nd Airborne, and New York City policeman. Tough? Absolutely. Intimidating? Surprisingly not. My grandfather was cold. He wasn't a hugging, kissing type of dad. So my dad was the opposite. Hands-on, always there, never going out with the boys. When 17-year-old Steve dropped the news that he wanted to move to Los Angeles to chase acting, he'd braced for a fight. But his father simply sat at the foot of his bed the next morning and said, "Good choice. Let's see what happens next. That's the excitement of life. What's next?" And with that blessing, 1976 became the year Steve Guttenberg jumped into the unknown, fresh out of high school, chasing a dream that would soon test the line between luck and destiny. He arrived in Los Angeles with just $300, a salami from his mother, and his father's worn briefcase. His parents gave him 2 weeks to find work or come home. Against the odds, he made the deadline. Within 14 days, he'd landed a Kentucky Fried Chicken commercial, starring opposite Colonel Sanders himself. But Steve Guttenberg wasn't satisfied with a single gig. He became a fixture on studio lots, Paramount, Universal, 20th Century Fox, sneaking past security with nothing but a blank time card and sheer audacity. No computers, no cell phones, just a guard, a phone, and his determination. Once inside, he'd call agents and producers, pitching himself relentlessly. The hustle paid off. Small roles came first, a TV movie called Something for Joey in 1977, then the lead in The Chicken Chronicles, a high school comedy that flopped spectacularly. But Steve kept moving, kept knocking, and eventually he landed an agent. Then, one ordinary day, that agent made the call every actor dreams of, a role that would change everything. The Boys from Brazil, a thriller adapted from the Ir-11 bestseller. At just 20 years old, Guttenberg was acting opposite legends, Laurence Olivier, Gregory Peck, James Mason. I always find the more successful the actor, the nicer, sweeter, and understanding they are. These 3 monsters were just fantastic to me. By 1982, Steve's career and his philosophy were taking shape. Barry Levinson's diner featured him in an ensemble cast with Mickey Rourke, Daniel Stern, and Kevin Bacon. Guttenberg won the role of Eddie Simmons by drawing on his own long-distance relationship, giving the character a vulnerability and authenticity that resonated on screen. He wasn't just goofy, he was smart, sweet, and genuinely insecure. Then came The Day After in 1983, an ABC movie about nuclear war that would be watched by over 100 million people, including President Reagan, and sparked national debates. Steve Guttenberg had proven he could handle comedy, drama, and even the gravest material. The kid who arrived with $300 and a salami was becoming a Hollywood force. Then came 1984, and everything changed. Steve Guttenberg was on the cusp of a breakout, itching to work with Ron Howard on Splash, only to be rejected. The role went instead to Tom Hanks. Irony, however, had other plans. The producers of Police Academy had wanted Hanks for their lead, a raunchy R-rated comedy about misfits navigating the chaos of a police academy. That part, it landed squarely on Guttenberg's lap.
The film was pure madness. Michael Winslow wailing sound effects, Tackleberry's over-the-top aggression, and Hightower, the gentle giant. At the center of the whirlwind was Guttenberg's Carey Mahoney, a relatively normal guy thrown into the circus as punishment, the audience's charming guide through an absurd world. Critics, predictably, despised it. Roger Ebert gave it 0 stars, calling it spectacularly awful. Audiences, though, they couldn't get enough. Police Academy became the 6th highest-grossing film of 1984, spawning a franchise that would cement Guttenberg's status as a comedy star. He even turned down the role of Peter Venkman in Ghostbusters to stay with Mahoney, reprising it in Police Academy 2, 3, and 4, before wisely stepping away. No one wants to be trapped in a uniform forever. Then, 1985 arrived, and with it, a chance to show Hollywood he wasn't just a goofball. Ron Howard's Cocoon was a prestige sci-fi drama about a Florida retirement community discovering a pool that restores youth, thanks to alien cocoons lurking below. Guttenberg played a charter boat captain who finds himself in the middle of this miraculous and romantic adventure with Kitty, an alien played by Tarney Welch. Surrounded by legends like Wilford Brimley, Hugh Cronin, and Jessica Tandy, Guttenberg held his own, infusing the story of mortality, love, and second chances with his trademark warmth. Cocoon wasn't just a critical success, it earned over $85 million and 2 Academy Awards, proving Guttenberg could thrive beyond the chaos of comedy. The year was 1986, and Steve Guttenberg suddenly became every kid's hero. Short Circuit hit theaters, introducing audiences to Newton Crosby, a brilliant robotics engineer whose military creation, number 5, gets struck by lightning and suddenly comes to life. Guttenberg's performance was pure, effortless charm, a man whose decency matched his intellect, who wanted to create, not destroy. The movie had it all: humor, heart, and a robot learning about life by watching Three Stooges shorts and reading philosophy. "Number 5 is alive!" became a battle cry for an entire generation. Kids everywhere wanted their own Johnny Five, and at the heart of it all was Guttenberg's genius, Ernest Newton. The film grossed over $40 million and quickly became a staple on cable TV, replayed endlessly throughout the late 80s and early 90s. For millions, Steve Guttenberg wasn't just a movie star, he was a piece of their childhood. But 1987 would mark the absolute peak of his career. First came The Bedroom Window, a stylish Hitchcockian thriller directed by Curtis Hanson. Guttenberg played Terry Lambert, a man who witnesses a crime through his lover's window and finds himself trapped in a dangerous web of lies, obsession, and betrayal. Darker, sexier, and far more complex than anything he'd done before, it forced critics to stop seeing him as just a comedy actor. Fans still call it his most underrated performance, and with good reason. It was a showcase of dramatic range Hollywood would rarely tap again. Then came Three Men and a Baby, the cultural phenomenon that cemented his status as an icon. Guttenberg starred as Michael Kellum, one of three carefree New York bachelors whose lives are flipped upside down when a baby appears on their doorstep. The film was a comedy masterclass. Three confirmed playboys fumbling through diapers, warm bottles, and sleepless nights, all while trying to maintain their social lives and careers. It was chaotic, hilarious, and unforgettable, a perfect showcase of Guttenberg's effortless charisma. The moment Three Men and a Baby hit theaters in 1987, it was impossible to ignore. The chemistry between the three leads crackled. Ted Danson brought authority, Elizabeth Shue radiated neurotic charm, and Steve Guttenberg, he was the heart, the guy you rooted for without even thinking. The film was sweet without ever being saccharine, funny without ever being crude. It struck a chord with audiences nationwide. And they responded big time. Three Men and a Baby became the highest-grossing film of 1987, raking in over $167 million domestically, beating out Fatal Attraction, Beverly Hills Cop 2, Lethal Weapon, and even RoboCop. It wasn't just a movie, it was a cultural moment. People quoted it, joked about it, and Steve Guttenberg's face was everywhere. He had officially arrived as a Hollywood movie star. He even returned for the 1990 sequel, Three Men and a Little Lady, which, though not as adored as the original, still found box office success. Then came 1988's High Spirits, a wild supernatural comedy set in a haunted Irish castle. Guttenberg played Jack Crawford, an American tourist who encounters actual ghosts. Directed by Neil Jordan and co-starring Daryl Hannah, Peter O'Toole, and Liam Neeson, the film was a chaotic mix of slapstick and romance. Far from a blockbuster, but a showcase of Guttenberg's willingness to dive into quirky, offbeat projects with visionary filmmakers. By the decade's end, Steve Guttenberg had been in some of the 1980s most successful and beloved films. He graced magazine covers, talk shows, and movie posters. His face was instantly recognizable. And yet, a curious thing lingered. In films like Police Academy, audiences remembered the sound effects guy. In Cocoon, the elderly cast stole the spotlight. Short Circuit belonged to Johnny Five. Three Men and a Baby was an ensemble piece. Guttenberg was always the nervous guy, the nice guy, the one holding it all together. There was a squeaky clean quality to him, but unlike many stars, it wasn't manufactured, it was genuinely who he was, and somehow that honesty became his signature. Even at the peak of his Three Men and a Baby fame, Steve Guttenberg was quietly different from his co-stars Ted Danson and Tom Selleck. In a 1988 interview, he admitted, "Unlike Ted and Tom, I wasn't much of a partier. My idea of a good time was watching sports and eating pizza. They're older than me, but somehow I felt like the oldest." Guttenberg knew his reputation and owned it. "I don't feel cornered by being Mr. Nice Guy," he said. "Being Mr. Nice Guy got me where I am now." But as the 1990s dawned, Hollywood shifted. The inoffensive charm that once won hearts suddenly lost its currency. Audiences craved edgier, darker protagonists, and Guttenberg's clean-cut persona struggled to fit in. He pivoted to family films like Zeus and Roxanne and light comedies like It Takes Two. He even directed the 2002 adaptation of P.S. Your Cat is Dead. Nothing caught fire. While Danson, Selleck, and Howard continued thriving, Guttenberg became a nostalgic punchline, his career reduced to 80s throwbacks, and his most notable 21st century role, a bumbling version of himself on Party Down. He embraced the oddities of fame, competing on Dancing with the Stars and appearing in sci-fi cult films like Love Doolittle and Sharknado 4. He even took on a dark turn in Veronica Mars, playing a pedophile. "I despise that character," he admitted, "but I relished exploring the darkness. Yet I realize now my reluctance to go dark hurt me professionally. People mistake niceness for weakness." Through it all, his father Stanley remained his anchor. When Stanley faced kidney failure, Steve drove 400 miles each week from LA to Phoenix for dialysis.
My dad was always there for me. I was in love with my dad. He was my best friend, Steve reflected. Stanley passed in July 2022 at 89, with Steve holding him, performing CPR, struggling to let go. I probably let him go a year later. It's hard to believe he's gone. Guttenberg poured his grief into art, creating the one-man play Tales from the Guttenberg Bible and the memoir Time to Thank, Caregiving for My Hero. When I perform, he says, I'm talking to my dad. Though he never became a father, Steve lives in Pacific Palisades, California, a community he's called home for 37 years. He was married to CBS reporter Emily Smith from 2019 until their divorce in 2025, quietly carving out a life beyond Hollywood's bright lights. When the Palisades went up in flames in January 2025, most people ran. Nearly 100 drivers abandoned their cars, fleeing the fire on foot. Steve Guttenberg didn't. He jumped into action, moving vehicles, clearing paths for emergency responders, helping neighbors escape. Online, his nearly 500,000 Instagram followers see a different side. Actor, writer, sandwich maker, his bio reads, but scroll through his posts and it's clear he's more than a tagline. Thoughtful reflections on kindness, gratitude, and everyday life shine through, quintessentially Guttenberg, unpolished, genuine, and unmistakably real. Even digitally, he's the nice guy, and it's not an act. It never was. Some actors can fit any role. Tom Selleck could have carried Indiana Jones. Gene Hackman could have led Silence of the Lambs, but a great character, that's different. It's about presence, heart, the unteachable spark. Guttenberg knows this. He's made peace with Hollywood's fickleness, choosing character over fame, action over applause, and authenticity over stardom. Steve Guttenberg knew something many stars never realized. His rise wasn't just talent, it was timing, luck, and being in the right place at the right moment. And once he understood that, he was free. When Hollywood's spotlight moved on, he didn't take it personally. The fame wasn't gone, it was simply shining somewhere else. Instead of chasing lost glory, Steve followed what genuinely interested him. He kept acting in projects that excited him, wrote books, took the stage, and shared wisdom with nearly 500,000 people online. Today, at 66, he's just as gracious, warm, and approachable as the lovable characters audiences adored in the 80s. His father once told him, life's real thrill comes from what's ahead, not what's behind. For nearly 50 years, Steve has lived by that lesson, never clinging to the past, always ready for what's next. And in that, perhaps he found the truest kind of stardom.